If you played around with a Ouija board and actually contacted a spirit, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made by the Zanders, what you should do, and how to beat the demon spirits in Ouija. The year is 1967 in Los Angeles. Mr. Browning and his begrudging daughter Jenny have enlisted the services of Alice Zander, a fortune teller, in order to get some closure after his wife passed of cancer. Alice gathers the couple around a table for a seance. She calls for Mr. Browning's deceased wife, Mary, to join them and give them a sign she's there by blowing out a candle. A cupboard creaks open and the candle is snuffed out. Alice lights 3 more candles in the center of the table. Mary is to blow one of the candles out if the answer is no, or leave it lit if the answer is yes. It all goes swimmingly until Mr. Browning asks Mary whether or not he should give a bunch of money to Jenny's boyfriend to invest in some unknown thing, which the boyfriend romantically hinged his marriage with Jenny on. Jenny, both thinking that they're getting scammed by Alice and knowing that the answer isn't going to go her way, tries to break the circle. She's quickly shut down when the table violently shakes and a dark figure supposedly representing his dead wife's spirit creeps behind the curtains. They all look to the candle to see what Mary's answer is. The candle's blown out. Jenny flips out because her attempt to scam her dad out of his money was foiled by another scammer. Alice quickly ushers Mr. Browning and Jenny out before they piss the spirit off anymore. The spirit, who is actually Alice's teenage daughter Paulina, and her younger daughter Doris, who was hiding in the cabinet blowing the candles out. The 3 candles Alice placed on the table were slotted onto an air system, and the table was mechanically shaken based on Alice's foot controller. Now, there's no actual spirits or monsters here where clutch decisions mark life and death. Just some classic scam action. Still, I have my thoughts. Alice is running a pretty sophisticated setup to make this scam work. I do think that she should be vetting out the skeptical Jenny types. They're too unpredictable, uncontrollable, and are likely to expose the scam, though Alice is an expert in her usage of red herrings to blunt their outbursts of suspicion. It would be preferable to only take in the gullible, grief-stricken widows and widowers like Mr. Browning. I understand this might not be an option because business might be tight, and the property tax on their Los Angeles home is expensive. The usage of candles with only yes or no answers is critical. Questions requiring long, detailed answers would quickly expose the scam. Paulina creeping behind the curtains is fairly risky. The Jenny types might walk over and find out it's just her daughter. As for Jenny, she knew her dad was conflicted about giving her money, and he likely was going to pop the question to his deceased wife. Knowing this, Jenny should have pulled Alice aside and paid her off. The fortune-telling business can't be that good. Not enough for that house. Alice would gladly have taken an extra Benjamin under the table to sway the answer in Jenny's favor. Sure, they'd be leading Mr. Browning into another scam, but are they really at fault for Mr. Browning's undoing? He partook in a seance to ask his dead wife if he should mortgage the house and yellow into some penny stocks he hadn't done any DD on. Mr. Browning obviously does not make smart financial decisions. He's gonna fuck himself out of his assisted living money with or without them. I feel a bit heartless after that one. Scamming is bad. Mr. Browning is a nice man grieving a lost loved one and doesn't deserve this treatment. That night, Paulina sneaks out to her friend Ellie's house. The 2 of them, plus Paulina's boyfriend Mikey and other friend Betty, play the infamous Ouija board game. Betty starts to freak out when Ellie contacts a spirit. Paulina tries to calm her down by telling her that it's all fake and that the game is designed for people to scare themselves. By everyone placing their hands on the planchette, nobody knows who is moving it, and they all react to the slightest pull by helping it move subconsciously. This is a psychophysiological phenomenon known as the ideomotor effect. Ellie makes a final call for the spirit to show themselves to quell everyone's doubts.
Spirit. Ellie!
Alice comes to pick up Paulina, who tells her that the Ouija board could be good for business. While the girls are at school the next day, she picks one up at the store and gets to work. Inside the Ouija board game is an instruction card. The rules are simple. 1. Never play alone. 2. Never play in a graveyard. 3. Always say goodbye. Sounds less like rules and more like suggestions, which is probably what everyone says until they summon a vengeful spirit that claps them out. Alice magnetizes the bottom of the planchette and uses magnetic knee bands to remotely guide it from under the table. She practices leading a mock seance, asking if a spirit is among them and what their name is. In her bedroom, Doris blankly says Marcus and begins responding to Alice's questions from downstairs in the seance room. Paulina is confused and freaked out by this. When Alice ends her practice run, Doris snaps out of it with no memory of her possession. Later that night, Alice gives the Ouija board another go. This time, she tries to contact her dead husband. There's nobody with magnetic knee bands band scamming her so the planchette doesn't move. After she leaves and turns the lights out, the planchette slides over to no. After Alice leaves, Doris sneaks over to use the Ouija board on her own. She tries to contact her dad too. The planchette shifts on its own to spell out "Hi friend." Doris picks up the planchette and looks around the room with it, then seeing someone says, "Who are you?" Meanwhile, Paulina is upstairs sleeping. Her bedsheet keeps getting pulled off. She thinks it was Doris, but Doris isn't there. Nobody's there. She gets back into bed, not realizing a dark figure is in her doorway. The Ouija board is new and trending, but it allows for more complicated questions and answers that they need to be more adept at funneling. As Paulina pointed out, the more people with hands on the planchette, the less people know who is actually moving it, the more real it seems. The Ouija board should only be used on either very gullible people or in larger groups. All Alice did was magnetize the planchette and throw the box out. This identical brand name Ouija board game is literally stacked in stores and is sitting in many people's homes. It would be smart to refinish it, add some scuffs, scratches, and make it look like a very old authentic piece that was pulled out of your great-great-grandmother's attic. The magnet trick is to be expected. If she wants to step her game up and make it more believable, she should memorize the positions of the letters in the distance between them, then move the planchette with her eyes closed. This will pronounce the effect of her not being in control of the planchette and enables her to spell out coherent messages should the victim get wise and ask that she closes her eyes. The rules of the game for non-believers like the Zanders are totally irrelevant. Not that they will be performing seances by themselves in graveyards or anything. So far, Doris is the only one who's made contact with an actual spirit. Alice and Paulina both think it's a cheap board game that they can use to scam people. Doris is too young for anyone to believe her, nor for her to understand the risks or know that the spirit she contacted might not actually be her dad. At school, Father Tom calls Alice in to review Doris's homework. It's all eloquently written in cursive, which is beyond Doris's capabilities. Doris innocently says that her friend helped her. When questioned, she says she doesn't know who she is. Doris says she lets her use her hand. Alice just thinks she's lying. Alice and the girls return home to find a notice of foreclosure on their door. While Alice and Paulina are talking about what to do, Doris returns with a pouch full of money. She claims Roger told her about it, which they could use to keep the house. She shows her mom and sister the space in the basement wall that contained the money. Later, Doris shows Alice and Lena how she communicated with Roger. Paulina is scared and thinks this is a sick joke. Alice, wanting proof that Doris isn't fucking with him, asks the spirit where Roger was when she told him that she was pregnant with Lena. The planchette moves around to spell shower. Alice is genuinely unnerved. When Alice asks if Roger is really there, it moves completely on its own to yes. Doris tells them that sometimes she can see the spirits through the planchette's glass, but she hasn't seen their dad Roger yet. Doris goes to bed, and Alice and Paulina chat about how now they can perform real seances and actually help people. Alice heads for bed too. Paulina is staying behind, still doubtful of the Ouija board. When she looks through the planchette, she sees a dark figure move by the doorway. Now that the Zanders all know that the Ouija board is real, I think it's safe to say that they should put it away until they have a better idea what they're dealing with, and not milk the portal to the afterlife like udders on a money cow. The family needs to convene and take stock. The planchette was clearly moving on its own, and there's no way Doris would have known the answer to Alice's question. It seems like they're communicating with Roger, and they might be in part, but something else is going on. Why would Roger be stripping Lena's bedsheets off at night? And why would he be creeping around the house as the dark figure Lena saw through the planchette? Doris mentioned that when she used the board, Roger replied with "Hi friend." Maybe that could be excused as an inside pet name we're unaware of. When Doris saw someone through the planchette, she said, "Who are you?" So it wasn't clear that it was Roger. When questioned about who was helping Doris with her homework, Doris said she let her use her hand to write with. Pronouns aren't matching up with her father. The bag of cash that Doris found with her imaginary friend's help is odd as well. Why would Roger have been stashing cash behind the stone wall in their basement? Is that really something Roger would do? Doesn't seem like it. This would be terrifying and enough evidence that they should stow the Ouija board until they do some reading and contact experts, or at least consult Father Tom. Alice is thinking too small here. More than cashing in a few hundred a week to keep their house, this is the greatest scientific discovery since ever, period. This is proof that the afterlife exists, spirits exist, cross-dimensional communication exists. I'm sure she can get some research grants to keep her house as long as she's willing to become a guinea pig for the afterlife communications and demonic possessions. Alice starts to keep Doris home from school to work with her using the Ouija board. Business has been good. Customers are convinced with Doris answering questions only they would know, and speaking in voices that aren't hers.
Always.
Doris starts to experience a pain in the back of her neck. After Lena gives her medicine, Doris looks through the planchette in the mirror and sees a tall black spirit with its mouth sewn shut. She tries to scream, but the spirit sticks its arm down her mouth and possesses her. Nobody heard Doris' screams. Paulina is only awoken by the possessed Doris whispering gibberish spirit talk into her ear, who vanishes as soon as she wakes up. Paulina goes to her bathroom to splash some water onto her face. There's more spirit gibberish noises coming from behind the shower curtain, which she ignores. When she looks back into the mirror, she gets Agent Smith's interrogation treatment. Luckily, it was all just a bad dream. Or was it? Alice pimping Doris out as a vessel to be possessed by spirits isn't a very motherly thing to do. It's also incredibly reckless and ignorant of her to think that she can harness a cross-dimensional portal in her dining room, and to think that she's only communicating with winged angels. Doris is only 9 years old and couldn't really be expected to make responsible decisions, especially when being egged on by her mom. Doris's game is over. Alice really hasn't seen anything too upsetting, other than the whole spirits talking through her daughter thing. Paulina, on the other hand, has seen a spirit, experienced some paranormal activity tomfoolery in her bedroom, and had an intense night terror in her bathroom. Speaking of, that's why I never leave the shower curtain closed like that. If someone lunged at you from behind the curtain while you were humming with a toothbrush in your mouth or checking yourself out, you'll be too caught by surprise to keep your footing or block any blows. Paulina should be adequately disturbed enough by now to throw the Ouija board in the fireplace and resume scamming people by dressing up as their deceased wives and daughters. The Ouija board is the crux of the seance. Destroying it should sever the connection to the spirit world, though this might not stop the spirits who have already made it into this world and into Doris's body. Defeating vengeful spirits is one way you can preserve the sanctity of the earth. An easier, safer way is to purchase dedicated land in Scotland. By purchasing as little as 1 square foot of Scottish land with this video's sponsor, Established Titles, you can officially be pronounced Lord or Lady. In return, they commit to preserving the beautiful, pristine woodlands and biodiversity of Scotland, planting a tree with every order, and raising funds to support global charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. Their title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Dunfermline, Scotland, with an official crested certificate proving your title, as well as a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. You can visit your plot of land at any time. No need to book tours or request a visitation. With this certificate, you could officially change your name to Lord or Lady on your credit card, plane tickets, and other credentials. You can even put it on your dating profiles as a flex to swoon the lasses, or lads. Giving the gift of land and title also makes for a great last-minute gift. Ditch the boring socks and candles. Get your loved ones the gift of well-preserved land and a proper Lord or Lady title for the upcoming holidays. You can even get a couples pack with adjoining plots of land for you and your partner. Support the channel, The Woodlands of Scotland, and elevate your Tinder status by purchasing a title with the link in the description or using my code NerdExplains10. Doris's possession isn't helping her make new friends at the playground. She's standing in the middle of it, silent with a blank face. One of the bullies tries to slingshot her in the head with a pebble. Before he can let the rock fly, she looks right back at him. The boys are stricken by the impossibility of her knowing that they were aiming at her. Doris then compels the bully to shoot himself in the face. That night, Alice has a date with Father Tom. They get to talking about the seances she's performing. Tom's worried that she's dealing with a danger she doesn't understand. While Alice is away, Lena invites Mikey over and shares a quick kiss before Alice gets back. As Mikey's leaving, Doris startles him by appearing out of nowhere. She intimidates him by describing being strangled to death in graphic and disturbing detail. Then she tells him, "Good night, Romeo," hinting that she heard them talking in Lena's room, and returns to watching the static on TV. Mikey leaves, Alice gets back, and Paulina gets ready for bed. When Lena walks by Doris's room, she sees her furiously scribbling pages and pages of cursive without even looking. Looks almost, dare I say, possessed. Lena returns to her bedroom to find one of her dolls on her bed, with its mouth sewn shut. She confronts Doris, who says she didn't do it, that Daddy did it to stop the voices. Paulina and Alice argue about what's happening with the Ouija board, and with Doris. Lena argues that if this is real and it is Dad, Why would he change Doris, make her do these things? She's concerned something is deeply wrong with her. It sure is nice of the spirit to give Doris some lessons in how to deal with bullies. If there's a sure sign that someone's fucking lost it, it's them intently watching static on TV. That and describing what it feels like to be choked to death as a 9-year-old girl. Between Lena's possessive gypsy mom and threatening psychopathic sister, Mikey needs to find another girl to take to homecoming. I can see why Mikey wouldn't bring up Doris's spiel to Lena. It's a mood killer, he has no proof of it, and Lena will take Doris's side. There's nothing to be gained. As for how she quipped about Romeo, it's possible that she was eavesdropping while they were in the bedroom, which again is fucked up. At least Paulina is finally raising concerns, thinking that they should cease the seances and destroy the board. Still, they've already let a spirit through, and it's pretty clear from Doris's behavior that she's potentially possessed.
Shit, so what you're saying is there's an actual demon here in the house?
It's in the bitch.
The Zanders could take Richard's advice, though it's a bit extreme to jump to right away. Alice needs to secretly contact Tom, who should contact any experts or exorcists he knows, especially if it's Father Doug. Then, with Paulina and Tom's help, tie Doris up in the basement until they get there. Exorcisms aren't always, or really ever, that successful, so keeping a sickle, piano wire, and some heat on standby should be standard procedure. Now, exorcisms aren't recognized by law, so it would be wise to buy some plastic wrap and a sawzall from the next town over with the cash, as well as come up with a strong alibi for why Doris went missing. I'd go with something along the lines of, she was headed to the playground and supposed to be back by dinner, but she never showed up. I think someone must have kidnapped her on the way. Tom and the priest simply came over for a seance that evening. I don't know. I'm sure Alice can think of something. Alternatively, they could try to video the exorcism or bring the police and government officials to witness it, but it's unlikely to work out well. The police would consider it child abuse and free Doris. Same thing with taking her to a mental hospital. The staff has no idea what they're dealing with. As for Daddy Roger, if he's there, he's doing an absolute shite job of helping his family. How the fuck is having Doris sew a doll's mouth shut or incepting a nightmare into Paulina's mind helpful? What are they supposed to do with that info? If Roger was at the Ouija board at some point, he should have clearly spelled out his warning. Dude's a shitty father and an idiot. No wonder he's dead. Before school, Doris yells that she doesn't want to go. She wants to stay and talk to her friends. Alice orders her to go, and Lena to go get Doris's stuff for her. Lena finds the papers Doris was scribbling the night before and brings them to Father Tom at school. The writings are in Polish, but he knows somebody who can translate them. Tom shows up to their house after school, wanting to take up Alice on the reading she proposed on their date. Doris leads them in the seance to speak to Father Tom's deceased wife, Gloria. Tom asks what Gloria's middle name was. The planchette moves around to spell Lynn. It then moves around to indicate a fight that happened between them before she passed. Gloria supposedly speaks through Doris in a grown woman's voice, saying sorry. Tom brings Alice and Lena upstairs to tell them that Gloria's real middle name was Catherine, and that he tried to manipulate the entity into doing what it did by thinking his mom's middle name really hard when he asked the question. The spirit possessing Doris was reading his mental energy, as they do. When he asked what their fight was about, he cleared his mind so Doris had to change the subject. When Doris used a woman's voice, it was a single word, just enough to make out that it was a woman, not enough to understand accent, inflection, tone, or anything that would identify her as his wife. All this to prove that there's a spirit possessing Dora that isn't Roger, or Gloria, or any of their loved ones. He then explains to the ladies what Doris wrote in her letters. It's a journal entry from Marcus, a man who grew up in Poland during the Second World War. His family was captured and tortured by a man they called the Devil's Doctor. After the Allies rescued them, he moved to America, where he later wound up in a hospital being treated by the same evil doctor who had fled to America too, and was now going by a different name. The Devil's Doctor abducted and tortured him in his basement, along with many other patients. He severed their vocal cords, sewed their mouths shut, and cut their tongues out so they wouldn't be heard by the guests he entertained above. Marcus, in great detail, describes his murder and what he experienced after it, being voiceless, cold, insane. The other things in the dark, things that weren't human and were taking him over. Alice refuses to believe that the person speaking through Doris at the seance wasn't her husband, because how else would it know the answer to her intimate questions? Lena says that the spirit was living here the entire time Alice and Roger were living there, watching, listening to every single thing they did in that house. Alice wants to move immediately. Tom says the house isn't the problem. Before he says another word, Lena stops him, stating that the spirits are still watching them. They should not have left Doris alone to have the talk. There was honestly no reason to. The spirits are in the fucking walls listening to everything. You think Paulina's bedroom insulated you from that? All this did was give Doris an opportunity to fight back. Tom knows the house isn't the problem now. Still, there's a reason the Ouija board at their home worked, and not the one at Ellie's or the other purchasers of the game. This place is important for reasons described in Doris's writings. The Ouija board game is also critical, as it served as a portal while the Zanders' other scam methods didn't. They need to tie Doris up and throw her in the trunk, taking care to disable any trunk exit mechanisms, then accidentally burn their house down along with the board game, collect the insurance, move away, and perform the exorcism at some remote location. At this point, they might as well throw the whole kitchen sink at it, make some planchette goggles, holy water squirt gun, cross shurikens from the Priest movie, the holy shotgun from the movie Constantine, everything. More than likely, this is all irreversible. The Zanders can't be an isolated incident. The popularization of the Ouija boards being used all over the world, which is basically a giant graveyard itself, means the Hasbro's PR and legal teams are gonna have a major shitstorm on their hands, as well as the entire world. Mikey arrives at a terrible time. Doris finishes her TV sucking thing and lets him in. She says that Alice and Paulina are upstairs talking about us, but they should be back any second. Doris invites him downstairs to check out the hidden treasure in the wall in the meantime. He hesitantly accepts. She brings him to the hole in the wall and tells him she found jewelry in there, but her arms are too short to reach the other things. While he's sticking his hand in the hole, Doris is behind him making demonic faces. As soon as Mikey says he doesn't feel anything, a mouthless skull jumps out at him, and Doris starts possessing him by rapidly whispering satanic incantations into his ear. Mikey, my man, why would you follow Lena's psycho little sister into their creepy basement, who not yesterday described getting strangled to death in excruciating detail? And why would you stick your hand into a dark hole in the wall in their basement? It's called saying no thanks. You don't actually have to go along with the stupid shit weird people want you to do. Mikey should have found another date for homecoming. His one-itis led him into a demonic ambush where it was too late. Doris's hypnotic possession powers were far too strong to combat. Alice, Lena, and Tom go downstairs to see Mikey's body drop with a noose around its neck. Alice tells Lena to wait outside while Tom and her find Doris. Lena refuses, saying that splitting up is incredibly stupid. The three take the Ouija board downstairs to burn it in the furnace. They discover the skull, as well as other bones from the people described in Marcus's journals. Guess nobody caught the Devil's Doctor since these bodies were never discovered. The money Doris gave Alice earlier wasn't stashed away by Roger. It was the belongings of the Devil Doctor's victims. A phonograph in a secret room of the basement turns on, along with Doris's screaming. Tom tells Alice and Lena to wait there while he crawls through the vent to get to the secret room. It's the Devil Doctor's lair. I see he likes to play some records while he tortures people. Tom finds Doris standing in the corner. The possessed Tom crawls back through the vents and attacks Alice with a knife, coming to just before killing her. He pushes Alice away and locks himself in the basement, not realizing Doris is on the ceiling above him. Upstairs, Alice and Lena find the Ouija board intact on the table. Lena hopelessly asks Alice what they should do. I know Doris was your beloved daughter and all, but getting baited into the devil's lair by Doris's fake screaming, not to mention splitting up to climb on your hands and knees through a vent with no weapons of any kind after seeing Doris hang Mikey up from the rafters, was exceptionally reckless. The Ouija board being undestroyable was a strong sign that they need to expedite the arrival date on the Vatican exorcist's plane tickets. Get the fuck out of the house and call the police, SWAT, animal control, everyone.
Bring me everyone. I mean everyone.
The more well-armed people that are aware of Doris's possession, the better. If the police can cordon off the Zanders home, they may be able to prevent further demonic corruption. A couple of scammers and a school principal are a little match. Then again, they didn't really know how powerful little Doris was until she started spider climbing, Superman flying, and using Witcher signs Axie and Ard. Alice is grabbed by an unseen force, while Mikey's corpse swings by and grabs Lena, throwing her up the stairs. Doris crawls up the wall and starts whispering more satanic incantations incantations into Lena's ear. Alice pleads with the spirits to take her instead of the daughters. The spirits say they'll take all of them. Lena is pulled into a dream of her bedroom the day she confronted Doris about her doll. Her father is there. Lena takes this as a sign to sew Doris's mouth shut to quiet the spirits' voices and stop the evil. She rushes down to the basement where Doris is chaining Alice up for torture time and whips her over the head with the stool. Doris tries to Fusro doll Lena, but runs out of supernatural steam. The spirits claw at Lena as she sews Doris's mouth shut, supposedly killing Doris in the process. As Alice and Lena cry over Doris's body, Lena gets momentarily possessed and stabs Alice. When she unpossesses, she tearfully begs her mother for forgiveness. Alice says she knows it wasn't her. She sees Roger and Doris standing behind Lena before she dies. 2 months later, Lena is in a mental hospital being questioned by Dr. Fuller, who's trying to figure out what happened to Doris, Tom, Mikey, and Alice. Lena's too lobotomized by PTSD to give him a straight answer. Later, Lena makes a Ouija board on the floor out of her own blood to contact Doris. Dr. Fuller passes by Lena's room and notices what looks like Lena and Doris sitting next to each other on the bed. When he does a double take, he just sees Lena staring at him. What he doesn't see is Doris. So, sewing Doris's mouth shut did nothing. Thanks, Roger. At this point, they're pretty much unstoppable. Doris can, in addition to her previous abilities, teleport in and out of dimensions, and those she possesses are sleepers she can activate anytime she wants. I honestly have nothing. Using the Ouija board and accidentally summoning a vengeful spirit is understandable for non-believers like the Zanders. The only chance the Zanders had was when Tom came over to tell them that they f***ed up. They should have immediately tied Doris up, duct taped her mouth shut, and waited for the professional exorcists Tom called to arrive. Doing this immediately might have prevented Mikey from getting hung. Doris probably would have escaped and killed them anyways with all her demonic superhero powers, and since Hasbro is pumping out Ouija boards and selling them across the world, even if Doris was contained, Earth would soon be facing a level of demonic corruption only stoppable by the Doomslayer. I think the demon spirits from Ouija are unbeaten. Thanks for watching, and remember, don't pimp your children out as vessels for spirits to talk through.